At number 10, you can legally be bumped last minute. So the topic of conversation that sparked this list happened back in April when passengers were famously bumped from a United Airlines flight from Chicago to Kentucky. As some United staff members needed to fly on the plane last minute, 4 passengers were bumped. It's common for airlines to cancel seats last minute due to staff needs or overbooking. There isn't actually much you can do about it, but you are entitled to compensation. Passengers can be denied a seat at any time until they board a plane. Once they've boarded, well, that can become a bit of a grey area. Like the whole world's media outlets saw, things can get pretty nasty, like with the treatment of Dr. Dow.
Next up at number 9 now, we have mentioning dinosaurs. I'm not making this one up. In 2012, the New York Department of Education put a ban on certain words that might cause unpleasant emotions in students. These include words like divorce and disease, in case the students are dealing with them at home. Words like terrorism and slavery are on the list too, but also dinosaurs. Apparently this is because the word dinosaurs could bring up the topic of evolution, which could cause religious arguments in the classroom. Dinosaur, 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 dinosaur. I guess this video won't be played in New York schools now. Moving on to number 8, we have hugging. Now normally you'd think hugging would be great for kids. It's a natural human thing to do to show affection or just to say hello and goodbye. Well, apparently not, according to a lot of schools that have banned it. Schools in America, Australia and New Zealand have all banned hugging because they say it can be inappropriate, it can make other students feel uncomfortable and even be used to bully people. One student in Florida was even suspended for a whole day in 2011 for hugging his female friend. I think he probably needs a hug after that. Next up at number 7, we have being too ginger. In 2015, Emily Ree from the UK was told that if she did not dye her hair a more natural colour, she would not be allowed to return to school. This wasn't Emily's natural hair colour to begin with. She had dyed it red 3 years earlier, but now the school had had enough. They said that no unnatural hair colour was allowed. Emily and her family argued that red hair is very much a natural hair colour. I'm just glad I grew my beard after I left school. At number 6 now, we have red ink. When I was at school, I would dread getting my work back from my teacher covered with red ink because it would be my teacher pointing out all the little mistakes I made. Well, in 2014, one school in the UK decided to ban red ink being used because it's a negative colour. Mounts Bay Academy in Cornwall told its teachers to use green pens instead when marking students' work. They said they weren't going all soft and fuzzy and that it was actually designed to encourage dialogue between teachers and students. Apparently some students even complained and said they want the red ink back because it's easier to read. Another high quality debate about education. Moving on to number 5 now, we have Pokemon. I don't know why this means Pokemon.
So that's right, I chose Team Instinct. Let's do it.
Now, you guys might be thinking that Pokemon was banned because it was a distraction for kids, but no. In 2000, all Pokemon related products were banned in a New Zealand school because they were, and I quote, laced with references to the occult. Basically, the school thought they were satanic in nature. The co-principal said they banned Pokemon because it is stubborn, headstrong, quibbling, self-centered, vindictive, obnoxious, hormonal, sexually preoccupied, evil, thieving and cross-dressing. Now, we all know Pokemon isn't any of those things, so kinda sounds like he was projecting some of his own issues, if you get what I mean. Alright, next up at number 4 now, we have yoga pants. In 2011, it was reported that a Canadian school told its students they would be sent home if they turned up in yoga pants. St. Joseph Catholic High School in Ottawa said that tight yoga pants would not be allowed unless they were sufficiently covered up by a long shirt or sweater. What's interesting is the most angry reaction to this didn't come from the students, but actually from their parents. One mother sent a letter to the school board asking why the school's emphasis is not more on her daughter's actual education rather than what pants she was wearing that day. The school had no comment. What do you guys think? Yoga pants too revealing for school? Maybe I'll wear some in my next video. Who knows? Moving on to number 3 now, we have the dictionary. That's right, you might think that a book that contains an alphabetical list of every word and their definitions couldn't possibly be ban-worthy, but you'd be wrong. In 2010, the school boards of Southern California started pulling the Merriam-Webster dictionary from shelves for 9 and 10-year-olds because it included a definition for oral sex. A spokeswoman said it's just not age appropriate, and that although it's hard to sit and read the dictionary, they'll keep looking to find other things of a graphic nature. That sounds like a very, very boring job. Literally reading every word in the dictionary in the hopes of finding a rude definition. Nice. Coming in at number 2 now, we have the man bun. In 2015, students at BYU Idaho's campus were told that the man bun had been man-banned. The Student Services Vice President said that as part of the dress and grooming code, we commit to avoid extreme hairstyles. A man bun would be considered not consistent with this standard. That's right guys, man buns are now seen as extreme. If extreme sports such as BMXing, parkour or base jumping seem a little bit too much for you, well now you can just tie your hair in a bun and you'll be like, crazy extreme, extremely extreme. I don't know, I don't feel very extreme. And finally at number 1 now, we have playing tag. What could be more innocent in the world than a nice game of kids playing tag? It's been around for hundreds, maybe even thousands of years, so I'm sure it's safe, right? You guys know what's coming by now. It's been banned in quite a lot of schools. Back in 2006, schools all across Washington banned tag because it was seen as too dangerous. Schools put the ban in place after kids kept running into each other. Yeah, I mean, is that the first time they've ever met a kid? That's kind of what kids do. They run after each other and they run into each other. That's probably where kids learn to not run into each other. In fact, if it wasn't for tag, I'd probably be running into people every single day. Maybe. You don't know that.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the rules of the road. This rule is probably one of the craziest things I've ever heard, but I guess it's been around for quite a while and I just had no idea. Turns out the monarch is the only person in the UK who is allowed to drive without a legal license or even license plates. I mean, what? That's so insane. I didn't expect the king to have to take a driver's test like everyone else, but just having a rule that allows them, if they chose, to drive without any idea how? It truly is just absolutely bizarre. The good news is though, which makes this rule make a lot more sense, is that of course, rather than driving himself, King Charles' chauffeur will be much more responsible for most of the driving for the king. Let's just hope the chauffeur has their driver's license.
Coming in at number 9, you cannot fly without shoes. You will be refused on an aeroplane unless you're wearing shoes. Shoes are a must. Bring spare shoes. You can never have too many shoes. The more shoes the better. I mean, it's true. It's what I tell my boyfriend all the time. Shoes. Shoes for the win. The best shoe to wear on a flight are comfortable shoes that cover the top of your feet. Trust me, in an evacuation you will need them. Now this is why airlines won't let you on planes without them. Coming in at number 8, you're not allowed to fly with valuables. Airlines will all stipulate that you cannot keep valuable items in your checked luggage. That's because they don't want to be responsible for having to pay for your things if your luggage is lost. You can keep valuables in your hand luggage, but you know, thieves. Coming in at number 7, female employees have to wear makeup. Almost all airlines enforce makeup upon female employees. Some even specify what colour tones they must adhere to. At British Airlines, women's lipstick is specifically a shade of Clarins red. Male employees, well, they're actually not allowed to wear makeup. Where is feminism when you need it? What if the men want to wear makeup too? Coming in at number 6, female employees have to wear heels. Ugh. Flights are uncomfortable enough without having to navigate them in heels. All airlines have strict policies for their female employees when it comes to skirt lengths, accessories, and footwear. EIAI made the news for forcing their females into heels of 3 inches. Also, big airlines like Delta and United also put their women in heels. It isn't just employees that have dress code rules, you guys do too. Airlines are able to refuse you if they feel that you're not acceptably dressed, and this dress code is coming in at number 5. Virgin Atlantic requires flyers to wear both top and bottoms when flying, and most airlines are not okay with bellies on display. So don't even think about trying to board a plane topless. Jumpsuits, bit of a grey area. And even leggings are a problem too. United Airlines made headlines for not allowing young flyers in the informal attire on their aircraft. Coming Coming in at number 4, you can't be overweight. Weight restrictions apply to travelers as well as employees. Not only do flight attendants have to look pristine, they can't be carrying extra weight either. Weight is a huge thing when flying an aircraft because weight needs to be balanced carefully. Also, weight costs money and fuel. Some airlines are looking to cut weight everywhere, and some of that comes from their employees. Air India recently demanded that all overweight air staff lose the extra pounds or risk being shifted to a ground position. Some airlines won't hire you if your body mass index is over 22, although this is really weird because you're still considered to be healthy with a BMI of up to 25. Overweight passengers are penalised too, with airlines requiring those flying to be able to sit comfortably within one seat. If you're unable to fit in one seat, you may be required to pay for two. Some obese passengers have been legally denied boarding in the past. You can also be denied boarding if number 3 applies to you. There's a rule in place that you can't smell. American Airlines has an odor rule which states that passengers can be pulled off planes if they have an offensive odor. In 2010, an Air Canada Jazz passenger was famously removed for a flight due to, I quote, brutal body odor. You'd better shower if you want to fly, basically. Coming in at number 2, your plane probably doesn't have enough fuel. Pilots are under constant pressure to fly with less and less fuel. Why? Because fuel weighs a lot, and that costs a lot. The more weight on a plane, the more fuel you need to accelerate. Basically, you burn fuel carrying fuel, and airline bosses want to cut costs. A captain at a major airline anonymously told Reader's Digest that they're very worried about how little fuel they're made to carry. They say they feel it's insufficient in case of emergency. Finally, very scary and pretty shocking, coming in at number 1. Guys, I don't want to scare you when you're flying, but if a hijacker is on the plane, there is an unwavering rule to protect the cockpit at all costs. Now, what does this mean for you? Well, it means you all die. Airlines do not want another 9/11 situation, and since then, security has been stepped way up, including in the cockpit. You actually cannot open the cockpit from the outside when the plane is flying without a code, or without the permission of the pilot flying the plane. There are always 2 or more pilots, so even if one was outside the cockpit when the hijack was happening, and the hijacker forced the code out of the second pilot, the pilot in the pit can override the code and keep the attacker out. Even if the hijacker threatens to kill everyone on board, they must not be allowed to enter the cockpit, because when they do, they could actually incur a way bigger loss of life by flying a plane into a densely populated area. Cheery! Let's just hope we're never on a plane with an attacker, cause and if we are, let's hope Samuel L. Jackson's there, because I would trust him to be my in-flight buddy.
Coming in at number 10 now, we have best friends. Yes, you heard me right. In 2012, it was reported that some schools in the south of England were banning school kids from having best friends so they didn't get upset by falling out with each other. An educational psychologist explained that they did it because they wanted to save the children the pain of splitting up from their best friend. Other people said this was totally ridiculous because children should feel the pain of friendships breaking up so they know how to deal with it when they're older. What would you guys do if someone banned you from having your best friend? No. Alright.
In our number 9 spot today we have the Armed Forces. One of the most intimidating parts of his new role is that King Charles will now become the head of the Armed Forces. This means that it is his responsibility and he is the only person who can declare when the country is at war and when the war is over. Of course, he won't be doing this entirely alone. He needs to follow the advice and guidance of the government. Can't just randomly declare war. The perhaps good news is that the new king has held quite close ties to the Armed Forces throughout his life, even spending time in the Royal Navy and taking flying instruction from the Royal Air Force during his second year at Cambridge University. Of course, the hope is that he won't be in a position to make these difficult decisions, but when or if he's faced with them, we can hope he makes the proper decisions for the country. In our number 8 spot today we have the Church. King Charles won't only be the head of the Armed Forces, but he will also become the head of the Church in England. Quite a jump from talking about war and being the one who makes those kinds of decisions to being the head of the Church, where things are hopefully quite the opposite, more peaceful. Council. This is a post that British monarchs have held since the church was founded by King Henry VIII in the 1500s, and it appears as though the tradition will carry on. In this role, it means that King Charles will be responsible for appointing archbishops and bishops to their role. The king will be, of course, advised in this role by the Prime Minister. It is said that the king is religious in his own right, and that he has already spoken about how his personal faith has informed his approach to leadership. In our number 7 spot today, we have gifts. The king has a duty to accept all of the gifts he receives, and not only that, but he has to accept them graciously. Apparently, it is actually quite customary for the royal family to receive every gift that is handed to them during royal engagements. Of course, people are always wanting to gift the royal family things, but like the Queen once had the power to do, it is now up to King Charles who in the family is allowed to keep the gifts they've been given. That would be a super strange meeting, but hey, there are some weird rules the royal family has to follow. In our number 6 spot today, we have never travel in pairs. This is one travel rule that certainly makes sense, but it is quite dark when you really think about it. This rule is that any heirs to the throne are not allowed to travel together, which means that the king is going to be traveling differently than he once used to. This is of course in case some sort of accident happens. Not every heir to the throne would be injured or perhaps killed. It's definitely very smart and very sensible, but it has got to be grim, just constantly preparing for the worst thing to happen. It is of the utmost importance to the royal family that they preserve the line to the throne. This travel rule is actually becoming more frequent among even other people outside of the royal family who can afford this type of luxury. In our number 5 spot today, we have the black outfit. Another travel rule that the family must follow is in regards to an item they must bring with them. It is unusual to see the royal family dressed in black, despite when a specific occasion calls for it, but every time they travel, they are required to bring an all-black outfit with them. This is again to prepare for the worst case scenario. If they are away on a trip and someone important passes away, they need to ensure that they are ready with the appropriate clothing for when they are able to touch down on their home soil. This is pretty practical, but also definitely pretty morbid. I mean, imagine having to fuss over what you're gonna wear when you're actually just mourning the loss of someone close to you. Certainly wouldn't be the top of my list for me, but clearly I am no royal. In our number 4 spot today, we have no touching. There is a rule that you just cannot touch a royal. I'm sure there are a multitude of reasons for this, most to do with security, but aside from a lucky handshake, you really are supposed to keep your distance. I suppose it's because I live the life of a regular person, but I feel like that would be so sad. I feel like you'd be lacking in so much connection with a ton of interesting people, and wouldn't you just be dying to hug some of the nice people you meet? Maybe that's just the Canadian in me. Apparently this is part of the reason why the Queen always wore gloves. She of course shook a lot of hands while out making her royal appearances, and the same will likely go for the new king. Maybe he'll take up gloves as a fashion accessory, just like his mother. In our number 3 spot today, we have the dinner choices. There are plenty of strange rules when it comes to royal dinner etiquette, but this one might be the most strange. I'm not exactly sure if King Charles enjoyed much seafood during his time as the Prince of Wales, but if he did, those days might be coming to an end rather soon. Apparently, the palace recommends that His Highness not indulge in shellfish. No shrimp, no lobster, you get the idea. This is meant to be for his safety, of course, because apparently it is believed that shellfish causes food poisoning more than any other type of food, so unfortunately the king won't be heading to the local Red Lobster anytime soon. In our number 2 spot today, we have no autographs. This is a rule that the king won't be much of a stranger to, as it's a rule for the entire royal family. Of course, in this day and age, people often ask their favorite celebrities for autographs, or more likely now, a selfie, but the royal family isn't allowed to stop for these kinds of interactions. For autographs, it makes a ton of sense. It's a safety measure to ensure that no forgers can learn to mimic the handwriting of royalty. I totally understand that. For selfies, it's less of an official rule and more just to do with etiquette. When meeting a member of royalty, it is important to never turn your back on them, so asking the new king to squeeze in behind you for a photo would definitely be discouraged. An act of admiration might just have the new king feeling a little bit slighted. In our number 1 spot today, we have opinions. This is probably my favorite of all of the rules we have today, which is exactly why I saved it for the number 1 spot. During the king's time as the Prince of Wales, Charles has certainly been known for having quite a vocal approach to different social issues and whatever the current affairs have been. He's an outspoken individual, and that doesn't always sit well with people. Fair enough, but now that he's the king, he does have some different expectations. He is now expected to not make his constituents feel uncomfortable or alienated, which means that he won't be allowed to be such a champion of certain issues. This basically means that the king needs to keep some more of his opinions to himself, which I'm sure is gonna make some people happy.